Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to our second meeting, I guess it is, of March for West Perth Council. Just before we get our meeting underway, I would ask that council and our guests, if they so wish, will just bow our heads in a moment of silent reflection. Okay, thank you. So the first item up then is confirmation of the agenda. Is there any changes to the agenda tonight?
Thank you through the chair. We do have an update, and that is with respect to item 6.1 regarding the modernization funding. This will be pulled from the agenda at this time. Some more funding opportunities has come up, and staff want to explore that a little bit further before we bring this report for approval. Second thing to note is there is a duplicate page in the budget and tax rate bylaw 2020-25 that is Schedule B, and we'll be removing that duplicate page from the bylaw. That is all. Back over to you, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, James. Okay, then I guess a motion would be in order that we accept the agenda with those minor alterations would be great. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Rose, and seconded by Councillor Phelps. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's quite carried. Does anybody have a conflict of interest with anything on the agenda? Councillor Foster?
I think I could have a conflict of interest with Perth County Planning. It's just information, but there's a severance of mom and dad's for Perth South on there.
Okay, so noted. All right. Okay, moving on then, we do have a number of items in the consent agenda. We have 10, as a matter of fact. Is there anything there that anybody would like dealt with separately or has a question on something or would like to support something? Councillor Fournier?
I would seem that item 4.2 is rather especially deserving of support, if you don't mind me saying so.
Okay. So you would like that one pulled out and dealt with separately. Okay. Anybody else? No, that's fine. One that I thought would be worth supporting, and it's kind of similar to one we did, but not exactly, and that's 4.5 from the town of LaSalle, and eliminate interprovincial trade barriers. And I think when they start to do that, we'll be a lot better off. So if we can maybe support that. So anybody have anything else? Okay, so the motion is that the Council of Municipality of West Perth accept consent agenda items 4.1, 4.3, 4, 4.6 to 4.10. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Harold, and seconded by Councillor Duck. Any further discussion on that? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. So we'll take 4.2. Councillor Fournier?
Well, just as it's commonly accepted, sorry, through your worship, just as it's commonly accepted, there are some words, for example, that you're simply not supposed to say. By the same token, if someone could walk into a tattoo parlor and get a swastika, I'd rather that be prohibited, or hang one from the inside their window. Whether it's in your house or whether it's on your skin, promoting certain things should not be tolerated, and that's why I would propose supporting such a wide ban as that.
Right. Okay. No, fair enough. So I take it you'll move that. Do we have a seconder for that resolution? No seconders? Deputy Mayor, second it. Okay. Thank you, Dean. Any further discussion on that? Councillor Duck.
I just maybe ask a question. I know a while back we had some issues with the flags relating to the Prime Minister and the derogatory nature that they had and the lack of things that we could do, obviously, because of people's rights. Does this kind of infringe or impose on any of those things? Maybe I'd ask that question to the clerk.
I can speak a little bit more to the previous matter. So the previous matter that we had discussed, that if there was a sign or symbol, really, promoting violence and things, and you'll note maybe the more recent examples had that little bit of I'll say an asterisk to it and didn't actually say the improper cursive word. So that was really the barrier that was being found there, where if it had spelled out the full word, it would have been a little bit different. So I think in this case, you're really just saying that you would support it. And I would leave it to, frankly, the province, if they're going to make that change, to determine if it's infringement on someone's rights or not. I think you're just asking for and supporting the question at this time.
Hey, anybody else have any comments? No? Okay. So it's been duly moved and seconded that we support the resolution from the Regional Municipality of Durham. All those in favor? 1, 2, 3, 7. Okay, and those opposed? Motion is carried. 4.5 from the town of LaSalle to eliminate interprovincial trade barriers, and I think it pretty well speaks for itself. I think as trade gets more difficult going north and south, that we should be looking at east and west and not put any restrictions within our own country and have freedom to cross the provincial borders. So can I move that as mayor? I can get somebody to move it, I'm sure. Murray's going to move it for me. Councillor Rose moves and Councillor Foster will second that. Any further discussion on that? You can tell me I'm out to lunch if you want. All those in favor of that motion? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Okay. All right, moving on. We don't have any public meetings or delegations tonight. So the first report is a planning report, and it has to do with the comprehensive zoning bylaw. And we have Maura here tonight to tell us what wonderful things she's going to do.
Perfect. Good evening, members of council. Thank you for having me back. I know last meeting I was before you to speak to the housekeeping amendment. This terms of reference of the comprehensive review is kind of the next step of a fulsome review of your zoning bylaw. The intention of today's presentation is kind of give you a summary of what I propose to be undertaken as part of this comprehensive review. Gives you a summary of what the scope of work is going to look like, and also gives you a summary of kind of the schedule I'm proposing of how long this is going to take, who is going to be involved, how different members of the community are going to be involved, and then I open the floor to your questions and comments on if there's anything missing or if there's anyone that we should be ensuring that we're consulting with during this process. So just a quick agenda for you this evening, project rationale. So why is a comprehensive review of the zoning bylaw required? Who is going to be undertaking this zoning bylaw from the county perspective, as well as from the municipal perspective? The scope of work, so how we propose to be undertaking this review, and then what the project schedule looks like. So as you can see, there is a fulsome list or itemization of policies and from the provincial level to the county level to the local level that guide land use. So the Planning Act sets out the rules and regulations for who can regulate land. The provincial policy statement then has regard for matters of provincial interest. This policy statement was, now it's called the planning statement. It was modified in August 2024, which required the county official plan to then consider those changes. Those changes were considered in the revised new county OP that's currently before the province. And as another requirement of the province, when changes occur either at the provincial level or at the county level, the zoning bylaw is required to be updated 3 years from that point. So you'll see that now that we have a new, I say proposed, it's still before the province, before the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing, just awaiting approval. But once we receive that approval from them, there will be a 3-year timeline as to when the zoning bylaw, the West Perth zoning bylaw, needs to be updated to consider provincial changes and those county changes. So I'm here before you just to ask kind of your guidance and your permission to begin this process and just your feedback on the proposed scope of work and engagement I have planned. So again, you'll see on the screen, this is the exact section that I'm speaking to of the requirement for zoning bylaw to be compliant and consistent with an official plan 3 years following the adoption of said official plan. The comprehensive review I have before you today, it will ensure that the zoning bylaw, not just West Perth's, but those of our other local municipalities, they align with the Planning Act. They're consistent with provincial planning statements. It conforms to the county official plan, and it also is reflective of current zoning trends and best practices. So you'll notice that, the presentation I had before you last meeting was for the housekeeping amendment that kind of looked to address the absolute necessary provisions and policies that were required to be changed to assist staff in implementing the zoning bylaw while we undertake this comprehensive review. So the intention is that anything that wasn't covered during that housekeeping can then be looked into during this comprehensive review and ensure that, 3 years from now, you have a current and updated zoning bylaw for use over the next 10 years. So this slide details the proposed project team and organization chart that I have for you. I anticipate this to be a collaborative approach between the county and all 4 lower and local municipalities. I believe it to be important for everyone across the county, both at the county level and at the local level, to be in collaboration across this project, simply because there are such similarities between developments occurring across the county that the more brain power there is put towards creating a great document, the more consistent we'll be able to make the policies and provisions that we have, and people will be aware of what's expected. There's not going to be any differences between, you have a property on one side of a county boundary or municipal boundary and another. You're expected to have the same requirements when you're developing and as such. So as you can see on the screen, I'm anticipating it to be led by county planning. It'll be led by myself as the kind of the project manager or the key planner. And then I will be collaborating with local GIS staff, local building staff, local planning staff, your development planner, to ensure that there's that local approach applied to the West Perth zoning bylaw. I'll ensure that it conforms and consistent with provincial policy, and then we'll also use the comprehensive review to ensure that it's reflective of current zoning trends and best practices. So you'll see the project scope before you, and if you take a look at the report that accompanies this slide deck, you'll see that there's some detailed steps and anticipated tasks that are included within each of these phases. So to begin, we'll have phase 1, and I anticipate this to be one of the collaborative phases. There'll be kind of one set of deliverables that is applied to each of the member municipalities, and it includes starting the terms of reference, which is actually what's before you today, as well as undertaking an engagement strategy to detail kind of who, when, what, and how all the key members of West Perth and the county as a whole are engaged on this project. We'll then move into phase 2, which is the research and analysis phase. This will include the creation of what I call background reports or research papers. They'll be themed into 6 or 7 themed papers: residential, agricultural, open space and parks, general definitions, and we will identify or use the, I guess, issues that have been identified by staff over the past couple of years as to what challenges there are with the zoning bylaw, and those background papers will then be used to determine if changes are needed or if there's any best practices that maybe comparator municipalities have that we could be implementing in West Perth to better prepare West Perth for the future development that's anticipated. The next phases, phase 3, 4, and 5, are really the drafting of the zoning bylaw. And that's when I actually propose to kind of break out the collaborative approach, and we'd be meeting specifically with local staff. So you'll notice in phase 1 and phase 2, there's kind of one steering committee that is a joint approach where we have representatives from each municipality on that. When we get to phase 3, I propose to break it out. So I'd be meeting individually with the CAO, the CBO, the planner for West Perth, and then all of the other local municipalities, so that we could ensure that we're providing a tailored approach to each zoning bylaw. So we'd be having the draft zoning bylaw undertaken. There'd then be a large chunk of engagement, the details of which would be detailed in that engagement strategy, and I'll touch on that later on. And then once the engagement happens, we would then be looking to incorporate any feedback we heard during that engagement in phase 4, which is the final zoning bylaw. That would then be before council for consideration and adoption, the final phase being any appeals that are made after adoption. They would then be part of the phase 5. Once all of the appeals are completed, then the implementation of the zoning bylaw begins. So here's a a summary of the project scope. It doesn't include the engagement, but it's just a summary of the deliverables. So as I detailed, there is going to be the terms of reference. That's what's before you today and what I'm looking to finalize and get your approval on, the engagement strategy, and then there will be a policy paper review, just assessing what types of policies or provisions that are available at the either upper tier level, at the provincial level, or at the local level that should be considered in the zoning bylaw. So it could be something like your parkland dedication bylaw, ensuring that the zoning bylaw is consistent with terminology used within that bylaw, ensuring that the zoning bylaw appropriately defines terms that are already mentioned in the zoning bylaw or in the parkland dedication bylaw, and then ensuring that there's no inconsistencies between the two. As I stated previously, there would be a deliverable of various background papers. So at this time, the background papers shown on the screen are kind of the themes that I'm proposing, but I'm looking for feedback as to whether there's other themes that need to be covered or if there's other typologies or zoning types that you'd like to be discussed, or if there's any preferences or emphasis that should be placed on any of the themes on the screen. As indicated, there would be draft zoning bylaws created as part of phase 3. There would also be draft Schedule A maps created for each of the lower tier municipalities. There would then be final zoning bylaws and final zoning schedules created, and then following appeals, we would do the implementation of the final zoning bylaw. So before you'll see a project schedule that I'm proposing. This is based on my best estimate of how long each task or deliverable is going to take. It appropriately considers engagement at each stage or each phase of the project, and it also considers timing constraints that are out of our control, such as the election in 2026. So we're proposing that the project begin shortly following your approval of such as well. And then we're looking at approximately completing this project as a whole in July of 2028. So you'll note that the engagement piece, I didn't cover it in detail, and that's because I'm hoping to create a engagement strategy as part of phase one. It's one of the tasks that you'll see in the report before you. And the reason I'm proposing this method versus including it in terms of reference is it will allow us to detail the specifics of engagement. So something we learned during the undertaking of the county official plan was that there was maybe a gap in not creating such a strategy from the beginning of the project. In order to ensure that there's consistent engagement and communication throughout the project, I'd like to create an engagement strategy to ensure that we're meeting various types of engagement or public participation across the public participation spectrum. So you'll see on the screen there's different methods that we can use. And we're hoping that we're going to align the engagement strategy with that public participation spectrum, as well as the county's community engagement framework. And this will ensure that we're reaching as many different opinions and groups as possible in hopes to ensure that the zoning bylaw, that the new zoning bylaw works for the most amount of people. So that's my quick summary of a very detailed and long-winded project, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have, and I'm also looking for any feedback you might have on what I proposed before you today.
Okay, thank you, Maura. Yeah, it looks like a fairly detailed, structured event that's going to take place over the next few years. Questions for Maura on the comprehensive zoning? You've either done a real good job of explaining or you've completely lost us. Oh, Dean has a question. Sorry.
Thanks, Your Worship, through you. So Moira, on the public engagement or the proposed public engagement piece, you mentioned you'll work on that during phase one. What's your timeline for having that set up and completed? That's my first question.
Through the mayor, we're currently working on that. I would say we're probably already at, I'll say 50% completion. We would then be looking to the steering committee, which we're proposing is kind of your representatives to finalize that. But I can provide a summary of what we're looking at to date. So we're looking at issuing notice of project initiation, the methods of which are still to be determined and to be discussed with the steering committee. But it's looking at using tools such as like social media accounts, both at the county level and at the local level, utilizing project web pages on both the local websites and the county websites, utilizing email blasts, so email updates either quarterly or at the end of each phase to indicate kind of what has been done and what is still ongoing. There's the potential use of the Perth County consent update that you regularly get every 2 months to provide updates on this project. So that's kind of noticing or tools that we can use to notice and inform. There's also the proposed use of open houses, one-on-one meetings with the public, which is something we did in the latter stages of the official plan and something that we felt was beneficial. So giving people the opportunity to sit down one-on-one with myself and other members of the planning and building team to ask site-specific questions. There'll be open houses, public meetings, meetings or surveys specific to various stakeholder groups that we identify. The details of those stakeholder groups have yet to be finalized, simply due to us wanting to ensure that we're sitting down with staff, local staff, before we finalize those and just ensuring that we have everyone who needs to be consulted. We're not missing any key members there. That was long-winded, but hopefully that gave you some insight there.
It did, and I thank you for that detailed answer. I guess on the part of the engagement and the consultation, the concern that I had observed and heard from the official plan is that particularly the stakeholder groups that were asked to, or the members that were asked to join the stakeholder groups, when they had the stakeholder meetings, they felt that somehow their involvement was superficial. That decisions had already been made in other quarters and that their input wasn't being relied upon as extensively as they thought. So there's the concern about that from the previous official plan process. And I guess the other, and you touched on it, was just the general public awareness of what's going on. And I just wanted to ask if you could reiterate, this is not the rework of the official plan. It's taking the official plan and applying it to specifics within each lower tier municipality. Is that correct?
Through the mayor, that's correct. The zoning bylaw is a tool that applies land use regulation on a site-by-site basis. It utilizes the overarching policies of the official plan. So where a official plan might say medium or might say affordable housing should be encouraged. The zoning bylaw will then put into place site-specific provisions on how that can actually be achieved. So to reiterate, it is not a rework of the official plan. The official plan will be final once the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing approves that. The zoning bylaw is a different tool used to regulate land use on a site-by-site basis.
More if I could, Your Worship. So like when we see applications come through at this council, like there's different land designations assigned to certain properties in the application. So that's really what this is about, determining what areas are suited for an A1 or an A4 or an R1 or R2 or R3 and that sort of thing, correct?
Through the mayor, that's correct. So the official plan, let's say, would have a designation of residential or neighborhood is what the new terminology we use is. The zoning bylaw then applies that on a more detailed scale. So we're saying, you know, neighborhood at the official plan level is all of this area. Whereas the zoning bylaw goes to say, okay, but within this neighborhood, there can be low density here, like a R1 zone here and a R2 zone here. There can be a park in this specific property here. So it provides that more detailed assessment of land use and development.
Thank you and good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dean. Any further questions? Councillor Fournier?
Just one quite simple one. I was wondering about item 2.4.4, number 3, the reduce or remove setbacks for NRE zones. Why?
Through the mayor, the reduction of adjacent lands is simply a review of how the natural environment designation within the official plan was created. So in some instances, the adjacent lands were already included in the designation in and of itself, just due to the requirements that the conservation authorities have for, let's say, regulatory areas. Because it's now encompassed in the designation as a whole, there may not be the requirement to have an additional setback from that designation if it's already encompassed within it. So it's just looking at ensuring the alignment of that zone with the natural environment designation or the NRE2 zone.
So it's like the MDS, but you're trying to figure out how far away the barn actually is?
Through the mayor, the not necessarily like an MDS, the previous tools used to identify adjacent lands have since changed. So the setbacks that are now required under the Conservation Authorities Act have changed, and we need to ensure that the adjacent lands zone or overlay or what, whatever it may be that so chooses to show that adjacent lands, is consistent across the board. I say, either overlay or zone because there is discrepancy across the county in how it's displayed currently in those zoning bylaws. So we want to ensure, both consistency across how it's being shown, but also consistency in that the setbacks or the distance that was determined, when the bylaw was created in 98, it's since changed to the recent Conservation Authorities Act change in, I think it was April 2024. So those distances have changed. So now we need to do a review to ensure that the adjacent lands or whatever it may be is consistent. And to clarify or maybe confuse further, the adjacent lands also may not be warranted at all. I don't want to say it's one way or the other, but there's potential that based on our measurements and based on our GIS assessment, there may not be a need for an overlay of adjacent lands at all if the natural environment designation already encompasses the 30, like let's say it used to be 30 meters and now it's 10. The natural environment, or the natural resources zone already includes that 10 meters in it, then that adjacent lands could potentially be removed in its entirety. Sorry that was so long-winded, but hopefully that gives you some relief and answers there. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions for Maura at this time? Don't see any hands going up. Okay. James, you want to read the resolution?
Through the chair, the recommendation is that the Council of the Municipality of West Perth endorse the scope of work included within the report entitled Comprehensive Zoning Bylaw Review Terms of Reference, and that the Council for the Municipality of West Perth direct county planning staff to begin the comprehensive review of the West Perth zoning bylaw number 100/1998 on behalf of the Municipality of West Perth, affecting all the areas within the Municipality of West Perth.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Councillor Duck and Councillor Harold. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. Maura. All right, moving on. We have nothing from the CBO tonight. Next item then is the 2024 annual update or annual report for the fire department. So Jess is with us tonight and she's going to walk us through that. So thank you, Jess.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council, for allowing me to step in for Chief Hunter as he's away. So the year in review report, this is, I believe, our 4th year in a row doing this, serves as a comprehensive summary of our department's activities and accomplishments throughout the year. It highlights our key statistics, such as the number of emergency responses, fire incidents, rescue operations, and other critical service calls that we respond to. Our report also outlines the department's efforts in our community outreach for the firefighters, their community breakfasts, and the ways that they reach our community in other ways, serving them instead of just emergency response, our training, our fire safety, public education, and prevention programs as well. This project is always a pleasure for me to piece together and a great reminder of all the ways we have connected with and supported the residents of West Perth. The year in review serves as both an accountability tool for us and a way to communicate our fire department's ongoing commitment to safety and the well-being of our community. Thank you for allowing us to share this with Council. We are truly proud of this fire department, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Very good report, by the way.
Thank you very much.
A picture's worth 1,000 words.
That's
Just think
right.
how many thousands of words we have here, right?
Yes, I eliminated all that reading.
Any questions for Jess here tonight on that? No? Okay. We do have a recommendation. James?
Through the chair, that the Council of the Municipality of West Perth receives the Fire Department 2024 Annual Report for information.
Do we have a mover and seconder for that? Moved by Councillor Rose, seconded by Councillor Foster. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you, Jess. All right, moving on, we have pulled item 6.6.1. So that brings us down to the treasurer. And we do have the 2025 property tax levy bylaw. So Wendy, I'll let you have the floor and you can dazzle us all you want.
Good evening, council. So this report is basically a summary of the budget that we've discussed in length so far. So in here it kind of breaks down the bylaw, and in the bylaw you have 3 schedules. One, Schedule A, which covers the county's levy, which isn't updated because it's not passed. So once it gets passed, we'll bring this bylaw back for third and final. You also have your education levy in there and your municipal levy, which is 12.1 million. So that's all in Schedule A. And then Schedule B is where there's the duplication, and there's an error in the report. You can see it right there where it says the streetlight area rate total is 171,875. It should be 172,179 as per the chart. So the chart's right. Schedule C is your BIA levy, which we're looking to raise 20,167 in the bylaw. If there's any questions on the bylaw, I'd happy to take them.
Okay, any questions for Wendy on that? Don't see any hands going up. Okay, so we do have a recommendation there. 6.7.1.
Through the chair, that the council of the municipality of West Perth receives the 2025 property tax levy bylaw report for information.
Thanks, James. Who wants to put their name to this one? Councillor O'Donnell moves. And do we have a seconder? Deputy Mayor Jankowski. Any further discussion? Last chance. Actually, it won't be the last. We'll have another go down the road, maybe. Okay, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thanks, Wendy. Okay, the next one then is the statement of remuneration and expenses. So I guess that's yours too, Wendy.
Yeah, so this report's fairly self-explanatory. It just goes through what council got paid throughout the year and some definitions as to what classifies different titles. So overall, through all the positions on council, it was 166,562.97 for the year. So if there's any questions on that report, I'd gladly take them.
Any questions? Go ahead, Councillor Fournier.
I was just wondering about the, perhaps I misread the document. There was one item in there in particular, each council having a Microsoft 365 account for, I assume, word processing and whatnot.
For email, it's your email account.
It's just the email account? I'm sorry, I thought that program also offered word processing and other documents.
It all depends on how we buy the license. It's just a basic license, which is your email account.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Don't see any hands going up. Well, James, take it away.
Through the chair, the recommendation is that the council for the municipality of West Perth receives a 2024 statement of remuneration and expense report for information.
Okay, we've got a mover and seconder for that. Moved by Councillor Phelps, seconded by Councillor Rose. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thanks, Wendy. Next is to do with the clerk's report and clerk's report. And we had this from the, I believe it was the last meeting, the kite flying that I didn't know what was. Anyways, take it away, James.
Thank you through the chair, and good evening, members of council. So the report before you today is regarding kite fighting as well as flying lantern regulations. So the purpose here is to provide information on current regulations around kite fighting and flying lanterns, The review was requested by council following some correspondence from the Perth County Federation of Agriculture regarding concerns with these activities. So I know this did come up at council recently, but by way of background, kite fighting is a competitive activity where participants aim to cut their opponent's kite string. And the string itself can be made from hazardous materials like metal, wire, fishing line, or nylon string. So we haven't had any reported incidents of this here in the municipality, but the potential risks and the correspondence from the Perth County Federation of Ag prompted the need for the review. So staff has drafted a proposed bylaw to prohibit kite fighting in both public and private property within the municipality. The draft bylaw also includes penalties for those who contravene the regulations. It's set up similar to the bylaws applied in other municipalities like Oakville and Orangeville. At this time, staff are only aware of 3 municipalities who have adopted bylaws similar to this. So there's not a lot of precedent out there in the province, particularly in rural communities, but the bylaw is structured in such a way that would prohibit the activity should it become a problem for West Perth. So if council wants to direct staff to move forward with this bylaw, the next step would just be for us to contact the ministry regarding set fine approval before the bylaw comes back for consideration of a first, second, third, and ultimate approval. And to comment on the flying lanterns piece, so these are small hot air balloons filled with an internal flame. Again, we haven't had any complaints of activity like this in West Perth, but these lanterns do have environmental fire safety concerns in some other communities. So what we would suggest is if the use of these were to become an issue in West Perth, staff's ready to address these concerns through the municipal fireworks bylaw. That's usually where you find these types of flying lanterns regulated. That is likely something that staff will be looking at reviewing in conjunction with our fire department at some point in the future. So that probably falls nicely into that review as something to include there. I think I'll leave it there for council and open it up on any questions or next steps here.
Okay, thanks, James. Questions? Councillor Fournier?
I grew up in Ottawa, and actually watching people doing kite fighting is pretty normal in the wintertime in Ottawa. There's that large lake on the Rideau Canal called Dow's Lake, and groups of people will go out there and do kite fighting every winter, as long as I've been alive anyhow. The prohibition against any kite fighting in West Perth seems to be a bit too broad for me. If we could identify some spot where it could be possible to do it, I can't see why we wouldn't let people, well, for example, I wouldn't go play football in downtown Mitchell, but you can identify a place where football is acceptable to play. And I would propose a slightly easier prohibition rather than just an absolute prohibition on this.
Okay, so noted. Any other questions or comments? Oh, I'm going to take Councillor Rose first and then Deputy Mayor.
I guess just a bit of clarification. A family that was in town could still take their kids out and fly a kite, not kite fighting, or cutting or whatever, but you could still fly a kite. So it's okay to do that, right?
Through the chair, thank you for that clarification. I've been careful with my wording not to get confused myself, and you're absolutely correct. So kite flying would not be regulated by this bylaw. Kite fighting would be defined within the bylaw and would be the activity of the kites fighting in the attempt to cut one another's strings. So thank you for that clarification.
Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thanks, through you, your worship. I would prefer us to be more proactive rather than reactive and wait for a problem to occur, that we be proactive and seek to direct staff to proceed with the formation of a bylaw to deal with this issue. It's been pointed out by the Federation of Agriculture that it's a serious concern to the agricultural community, and I believe we should pay heed to it. Understanding that through Councillor Fournier's comments that this sort of activity does take place elsewhere. I think the nature of the importance of the agricultural activity in this area would behoove us to proceed forward with pursuing this bylaw. And I would be willing to make a motion to that effect.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Any other questions? Councillor Harold?
Not so much a question, just a comment. Excuse me, I am in agreement with what Deputy Mayor Trentowski just said. We're not talking about a piece of string and, you know, two young children playing with kites out there. It's the type of string or whatever you would call it. The whole thing isn't just for kids and children's fun. It's a serious game. We are in an cultural area. And it is very hazardous to the equipment and to the livestock if any of those items get into the feeds or into the fields, and we don't have an area for them to do it, but there probably is an area somewhere, and I would suggest if that's what you want to do, that you go to that area, not here.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Anybody else? Okay, I don't see any hands going up. So the recommendation that we have here is that the Council Municipality of West Perth receives the review of kite fighting and flying lantern regulations report as information. And Councillor or Deputy Mayor Trentowski has indicated he would move it. Councillor Harold will second that.
Misunderstanding.
Oh,
No, I don't wish to receive it as information and set it aside. I wish to direct, my motion is to direct, is for council to direct staff to proceed with creating a bylaw as per the draft that's been provided here to council in the agenda.
okay, we can tweak that. Okay, are you okay, Steve, with that? Yeah. Okay.
Just clarification, are we moving the lantern one to the firework one and keep the kite one as separate? Or are you looking to put them both in? Because I think the lantern one makes sense in the firework
Yeah.
bylaw, but just clarification.
Yes, the lanterns would be dealt with separately under different municipal legislation.
We can put that in there if you wish, I guess, that the lanterns be added.
I think the lantern piece is clear to me with the direction on that. Staff will work with fire services at the appropriate time to incorporate that into future firework bylaws.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with that. Thank
Fair
you.
enough. Okay. So I'll get you to read the motion this time. We've tweaked it a little bit.
Through the chair, and just a point of clarification to the deputy mayor, are you requesting that staff proceed with the bylaw as drafted and included in the package, which would be a bylaw to prohibit the activity outright within the municipality?
That's correct.
Thank you. So through the chair, the motion then would be that the staff be directed to proceed with preparing a bylaw in accordance with the draft bylaw provided as part of this agenda package and bring it back to council for consideration.
Okay, thank you, James. So it's been duly moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That is carried. Thank you. The next item then is the tidy yards bylaw follow-up. And James, you were working on this one as well, weren't you? Okay.
Yes, thank you through the chair, and hello again, members of council. So this report is a follow-up to the March 3rd, 2025 meeting where feedback was received from council. Staff have reviewed some of the comments received and outlined some of those items within the staff report. We've also received some feedback from council following the publication of this report. And one important point I'd like to highlight is approach with respect to enforcing these bylaws. So when the municipality does receive a complaint, appropriately, our first step would be to conduct a review and gather more information. And if we find that a complaint's unfounded or unreasonable, such as issues maybe caused by temporary conditions beyond an owner's control, I'm thinking weather-related factors or short-term challenges, we're going to explain that to the complainant, monitor the situation as we need to, and not take any further action. If a situation does require investigation, the goal would always be to resolve complaints collaboratively where we can. What I mean is we want to work with the property owner and the complainant to find a fair and reasonable solution wherever possible. So that involves explaining the bylaw and providing the owner with a reasonable opportunity to address any concerns before moving to a fine or more forceful form of enforcement. So I think that's really important. I think there's value in taking a more balanced and thoughtful approach to resolving these complaints. And ideally, I think you want to get there without escalating to fines and focusing in on that education and communication piece about the bylaw. And I think that is really important with respect to this tidy yards bylaw that does set up a number of regulations that where there is some room for officers to make interpretation, to assess the situation, and to work with landowners and complainants. So I'd flag that. And then in terms of changes, I'd note that we've amended section 7.27 to allow for a maximum of 3 cargo containers on a property. Previously, cargo containers were only allowed in industrial zones. This gives property owners a bit more flexibility while maintaining still appropriate standards. That said, after a bit further review, we're going to recommend that this clause be changed to make it clear that these storage containers are not permitted in urban areas of residential properties or properties zoned residential in an urban area. Essentially, a rural farm property could have up to 3, an industrial commercial site, but an in-town residential property would not be allowed to have up to 3 permanent cargo containers. So I just wanted to make that clarification. I think I'll pause there again and open things up for comments, discussion. Thank you.
Okay, yes, I don't think we really want cargo containers in backyards in Mitchell. Comments, questions, Councillor Phelps?
So if there's existing cargo containers in town, then they'll be asked to be removed? Is that?
Or grandfathered in, which?
Yeah, it would, well, they wouldn't necessarily be grandfathered in, so to speak. I think it would have to be complaint driven would be one thing. And then it would depend on the zoning and use of the property. So again, if it's a residential property, then yes, by technicality, how we're looking at this current wording of it, then yeah, they would be prohibited. If they retain some sort of small commercial industrial, then no. So, and again, that's something we could take back a little bit further. What we essentially landed on was just stating you can have 3 cargo containers on any property could, create some problems where very small residential lots then put in 3. So that's the rationale there. Thanks for the question.
Other comments or questions? Councillor Phelps, or Rose, rather?
I guess it was just more clarification for myself. I've had some constituents come up and have a complaint, whether it's because of weeds or because of something at their neighbors or in the neighborhood they don't like. I always tell them to come to the office or get a hold of staff here, because to tell me, I just can't say in the middle of the meeting, oh, by the way, there's procedures they should follow, and then it's documented as well. Is that correct in what I'm telling them?
Through the chair, I would say that's absolutely correct. To your point, there's procedures, we can document it, then we have someone we can work with. We have a complainant that we can work with. We can report back to them and let them know what we've done with their complaints. So absolutely reaching out to us is the right place to do it. They can go through our municipal website or contacting us here at the municipal office.
Thank you.
Somebody else had their hand up over here, I thought. Councillor Fournier?
Just 2 very quick questions. The cargo container thing, how is this going to affect the smoke shop downtown? The Hunt family, I believe, put in a cargo container in the back behind their weed store, and they were intending to turn that into something, and that caused quite a lot of trouble for them. I don't know if the bylaws were properly researched on their behalf beforehand. How would that affect them? And also the derelict vehicles thing. I've got to protest that in some way. Just, I know that I represent West Perth, but I also do represent my neighbors, and Staffa is a ridiculous mess. And rather, a lot of us quite like it that way. And I just don't want to have the derelict vehicles thing in there written quite as it is, because I don't want to have a neighbor moving in and causing quite that much hassle for my neighbors. So if there was even some small carve out in there that perhaps you have a good reason for having derelict vehicles on your yard, like you run a demolition derby team, for example. So you need to have derelict vehicles there because that's kind of the nature of your game. Just wanted to make that point on behalf of my neighbors.
Counselor Phelps?
Just a comment to derelict vehicles, if they went and asked their property insurance representative, they would not be allowed because of the environmental risk, and they probably wouldn't get coverage. So all they gotta do is ask their broker who asked the insurance company, and I'll bet they'll tell them to remove them.
Anybody else?
I can speak to the first question. I don't have the particulars of the situation with the cargo container behind the commercial unit, but being a commercial unit, this tidy yards would not affect the cargo container from that perspective. But again, without knowing the details, there are likely other regulations and municipal legislation that would need to be complied with depending on how that cargo container was intended to be used. So I think I'll leave it there for that explanation.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, and I just wanted to clarify, so we noted this on the first time around, but really what we've done with this bylaw is mirrored our property standards bylaw. And I think if there's some concerns in some of the aspects that council's seen in this bylaw, then we should get direction from council to review our property standards bylaw, which section 2E prohibits any wrecked, dismantled, inoperative, discarded, or unlicensed vehicles, trailers, machineries, or parts thereof on anyone's property. So it's not, the tidy yard bylaw is not meant to change anything or make any more further regulations or restrictions. What it's meant to do is, in order to enforce the property standards bylaw, we would have to essentially issue an order. This way, with the tidy yards bylaw, we don't need to go through an order when there's a matter that really needs enforcement. We can have that fine aspect. Issuing an order and enforcing an order is very expensive for the municipality. Issuing a ticket is a lot easier and cost effective for the municipality. So I just wanted to clarify that there's nothing really being changed. It's just a different tool.
It's maybe not directly related, but unlicensed equipment, what's the definition of that? Because no farm equipment's licensed.
But I did read something, and I don't know where it was, about agricultural equipment, if it was lined up in a, did you find that, Diane? Yeah, in an orderly fashion, it's not considered derelict. If it's helter-skelter, that's maybe a little thing, but a little different, but yeah.
And I don't see anything explicitly. And again, the property standards bylaw is a 2013 bylaw. So, you know, I think it goes back to Clerk Hudson's initial point that this is a complaint-driven process. Staff do conduct an investigation. And, you know, there's instances where we don't want to issue fines. We want to educate and try and resolve and make everyone happy. It would not be in anyone's interest for us to go into a farm and start looking for licensed equipment or anything of that. We wouldn't even do it, to be frank. So I guess there's a bit of a, I'll say some degree, there's got to be a little bit of a degree of trust with these bylaws that are here, and some trust into staff and their investigation. Or like I said, if you want, we can certainly review property standards bylaw as well. And I think that tidy yards bylaw also mirrors our property standards, which is very similar almost identical to all of the lower tiers across Perth County. So. Carry
The
on.
only, no, and I'm taking it that we're going to send this back and you're going to tweak it and then come back with it again.
Through the chair, yeah, based on the feedback I've received, I would take this back and make those tweaks, as you say, and then bring this back for council's consideration.
Well, the only thing I want to really see tweaked is the container part and address that, like, we don't want CCAN containers in town, but it's okay out in the rural area. I'm still not in favor myself of derelict cars on the front lawn. I don't think we want to, myself, I don't think we want to change that. It's in our property standards and I think we want to keep that. But we don't all think alike anyways, Councillor Fournier will tell me. But we just need some direction for James when he's going to rework it. What's your wish? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. I would like to see the wording concerning the containers be redone and represented in the next edition of this draft bylaw when it comes back to council. And I agree with Councillor Phelps, Mayor McKenzie, and staff that the vehicles, that clause needs to be remain in the bylaw and enforced accordingly. Thanks.
Anybody else? So do you need a motion for direction or we just receive this for now and refer it back?
Yeah, I think what I would propose in terms of a motion would be that staff be directed to further review the tidy yards bylaw and bring it back for final approval. And that staff be directed to amend section 7.27 with respect to cargo containers. So that would be essentially the basis of a motion to give direction.
Sounds like a good motion to me. We got a mover, Councillor Phelps. We have a seconder, Councillor Duck. Any further discussion? Councillor Foster.
Isn't it, if a cargo container is meant to be a permanent structure, would it not have to fall under the building code once it's in place because it's over the minimum square footage?
Through the chair, I would take a stab at saying yes to that. Yes.
I know it's
a cargo container being used as a habitable unit would have a number of regulations to comply with beyond being used as a storage unit, including most likely the Ontario Building Code.
I meant even as a storage unit, if it's meant to be there permanently, is it not become a structure at that point? Which would put it over the square footage of a shed at whatever it is, 100 meters or something like that, square meter.
It's kind of a question for Matt, I guess. Like certainly, I'm assuming you would need a permit to put one there, wouldn't you? Like it's larger than what a tool shed is.
Yeah, we can bring back to that question, but I would think the line of thinking there is, yeah, it would need a permitted and it would likely fit though aspects of the building code and meet the requirements for a shed.
It would be classified as an accessory
Yeah.
building. Right? Yeah. Okay. So, Diane, go ahead.
For the cargo units, are they allowed in hamlets? We said urban, so it was urban just Mitchell, and then that excludes all of our hamlets, or what? What's the definition there? I just want
Good question.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks for that. So it would be urban settlement areas zoned residential. So property zoned residential within an urban hamlet or hamlet area would be included in that prohibition of not being allowed on the residential zoned properties. So it's if they're within an urban area and they're zoned residential as the property, as it stands, they would be prohibited. And that's what was proposed. If council wants to do something less restrictive, I think you're at the point there where you're just saying what's the number of cargo containers you want to allow on any property, because I can't think of a way to make that even less restrictive than that. So if we want to allow on all properties, that's what it's written as currently, and it would simply be, how many how many does council want to allow?
No, I think if you can address it as to urban residential areas be prohibited. Bill?
With the tidy yards bylaw, could we not just update it or update the property standards bylaw and like join this in and eliminate the one?
You could, absolutely. They're two different tools. Like one's a big sledgehammer and one's a little more, like the tidy yard's a little smaller, right? So technically your property standards bylaw is actually coming from your buildings code. And that's where that bylaw gets its authority and is enforceable. And that's why the process to go through issuing an order and everything is quite more, I guess, just labor intensive on staff that way. This one's, you'd still want a property standards bylaw. Some of the things that you're seeing in here are true tidy yard bylaw things, and they're not property standards bylaw things. But we've never had a tidy yards bylaw, and they've been buried in our property standards bylaw. So that's kind of why we were trying to bring a tool forward. And then once we have everything in tidy yards bylaw, I think our intent would be to bring forward our property standards bylaw, which is 2013. It's time to bring that forward. And it would actually just, I don't want to say that it would be a smaller bylaw because things have changed since 2013, but I think you would see the nitty gritty stuff removed out of there. And it would be more true building code associated type matters that you're seeing in property standards. Hopefully that made some sense.
Just a quick Google and it said a cargo container falls under the building code as soon as it sits on a property because it contains walls, roof, and a floor. So as soon as we set it on whatever property, it becomes a building code thing anyways, and they should apply for it if it's over the square footage of, what is it, 116 square feet or something like that. It should be. And the other question on 3 cargo containers, is that 340 by 8 cargo containers? Is that 320 by 8? Is it like, when we say 3 cargo containers, because they do come in different sizes, what do we want to see utilized that way? So I think there just has to be a little more specifics on what we do, but I don't think Phil's wrong that it probably fits better in property because then it becomes a building under the building code, doesn't it, instead of a tidy yard thing? Because I think, again, are we talking a 12 by 8 that's just a garden shed, or are we talking a 40 by 8? That's a whole different thing when you put 3 40 by 8s beside each other. And
yeah, thank you for the question. So even I'll back up one more, and you had the presentation today, is that I actually think it's a zoning bylaw matter. But that's where we're missing. So, you know, we've got these holes, and this is one of them that we're just trying to plug that hole right now. Because, you know, we're seeing this, it's happening north, like North Perth bound, where there's agriculture properties that are getting flooded with these with these containers, and they're essentially being storage yards, and that's happening. So it is a zoning bylaw matter. As you saw today, that's maybe a 2028 solution. And yeah, we're just trying to plug that hole. So we're happy to remove it. We're happy to take council's direction, but the main intent of this, of the cargo containers, is to prohibit them from being taking over an agricultural property, basically a field or something to that aspect. And then there certainly is some degree of neighborhood beautification aspects that way. So, you know, and then from there, we're looking to council for really where we want to go.
Okay, so I think we've kind of come to the conclusion that you're going to take it back. And we've addressed a couple of things that we want to see tweaked, and maybe the size of them is another thing that we need to put in there. And where we're going to allow them basically in an agricultural area. So I think that has it. Did I get a mover and seconder to take it back? Okay, so did I? Oh, okay. I can't remember. Did we? Yeah, okay, all right. Yep. So it was moved that we, no, yeah, we've referred back to staff and they'll come back with it again at a future meeting and we can go with it there. So, okay. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Okay, good enough. All right, moving on. The next is correspondence. And it is referred to us from the last, I guess it was the OPP meeting. And who wants to run with this one? We had the correspondence in our package. Okay, Dan's going to update us.
Thank you. Sorry. So at the last Perth County OPP detachment board meeting, the board received a presentation on IPV. And I believe it got into a bit of a gender-based violence as well. So following the recommendations of some of that training were highlights on just really it being declared. Sorry, I'm just losing my thought. Is it up? Thank you. Epidemic. I didn't know if that was the word or not. Thank you. And sending out a correspondence for support from the other municipalities to declare as well, and also look at taking the training potentially first for that. So if council wishes, we can look to organize that training for council. It was maybe something that would fit standard within our delegation time slots here for this council, and then we could look at next steps that way. I'll also just quick jump in that there is some community safety well-being plan updates, and one of the sessions tomorrow is on IPV and gender based violence as well. So sorry if there's any questions, certainly answer them, or Councillor Harold as well is here.
Okay, questions with regards to that? What they're looking for is for this municipality to support it. Really?
I think, yeah, they would be looking for you to probably get the training first would be recommendation, and then to make the decision if you'd want to support it.
Any questions? None? Okay, then the recommendation that we have is that the Council Municipality of West Perth declare intimate partner violence as an epidemic in our region and develop a local action plan to address this critical issue. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Fournier, Councillor Duck. Any further discussion? Deputy Mayor Tunkowski?
Thanks, Your Worship. I guess with any new plan that's put into motion, there'll be a lot of details to sort out and work out ahead of time. I just wondering at some point, perhaps after we've had the training, if this issue could be brought back to council to have a more in-depth discussion about the details of what the plan would look like, and the logistics and the budgeting and so forth.
Yeah, I think for sure that's something there at this stage. To be frank, I think if you got the training and we were to develop a local action plan, I think we'd actually recommend to council that we develop a regional action plan, and it follow the community safety well-being, as opposed to a plan being developed there and one being developed here at the West Perth level. But that's just my opinion on the matter right now.
Anything further to add, Steve?
Not really. I think that pretty much ties it up.
Then I'm looking for a mover and seconder for that recommendation. Do we? Oh, that's right. That's right. I remember. Okay. All right. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you, James. We get lost in the discussion sometimes. All right, the next piece of correspondence is regards to Bo's Grill, and the recommendation is there. Correspondence was included in our package. It was pretty well self-explanatory. I don't know if anybody has any questions. No questions? I will read the recommendation, or James, you can read the recommendation and we'll take it from there.
Certainly, through the chair, the recommendation is that the council of the municipality of West Perth authorizes Bo's Grill to use municipal lands at the Welcome Center, 9 Huron Street, for the purpose of operating a refreshment vehicle from April 1st, 2025 to October 31st, subject to the terms and conditions of the refreshment vehicle license as issued by the municipality.
Okay, moved by Councillor Phelps. You want a hot dog? Okay, didn't bring any tonight. Seconded by Councillor Duck. Any further discussion on this? It, it worked well before, I think. And there really any negative comments. I think it worked out fairly well. So, okay. So we've got, that's duly moved and seconded. All in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. Thank you. There you go. The Earth Grid Modernization Project, and they're looking for a letter of support. And I should have mentioned at the start of the meeting that Nicholas Fink isn't here tonight because he's at a, I'm going to say it's a hydro conference, and as chair of Earth, he had to go there because we figured that if we had any questions, Nicholas could answer them. But anyways, the recommendation is there. You want to add a little bit to it, either one of you?
Through the chair, no, not much to add there. A resolution of support would assist Earth in their grant application. So they're reaching out to all their local partners, attempting to obtain as many resolutions of support as they can. And I would say it's likely a good thing for council to support, given that additional funding to Earth as a whole will benefit the taxpayers of the municipality.
Okay, very good. So the recommendation that we have is that West Perth direct staff to forward the correspondence to Earth Power Corporation in support of the grid modernization project. We have a mover and seconder for that, Councillor Chessel, and got to take my pick over here. Councillor Fournier, you had your hand up, didn't you? Oh, I missed it that time. Okay, Councillor Rose. All those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. All right. Councilor reports, we have nothing, I don't believe. Bylaws. Now, there's one of these we need to take out. Oh, yeah, take the first one.
20.
Okay, all right, okay. So, what we have here then is, first and second reading will be for bylaw 20 and 21, right? So 20 is annual budget levying and collecting of taxes, and 21 is a bylaw to provide the collection of actual costs of repairs and maintenance on a municipal drainage works completed in 23. That's trying to think of the drain that was, but
that was branch C of the 12th concession, I believe.
Right, that's right. Okay, yep. Okay, so the recommendation that we have is that we give first and second reading to bylaw 20, 2025 and 21, 2025. Mover and seconder for that. Councillor O'Donnell, Councillor Foster, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. And then the last one is that the Council Municipality of West Perth give third and final reading to bylaw 21, the 17th day of March. Mover and seconder for that. Councillor Fournier and Councillor Rose, all those in favor? Opposed, if any? That's carried. All right. Coming events, there's still time to take the trek to Dublin. You want to go to the St. Patrick's Day dance tonight? Number of announcements here. March the 19th, Caring for the Soul Community Grief and Wellness Workshop at the West Perth Village. The OPP Coffee at Tim Hortons on the 20th. And then the Seniors Dance is on the 26th. Dublin Men's Steak Night is the 28th. And 31st is to the 11th is the Optimist Music Festival. And the 2nd is Autism Awareness Day, and we're putting that up on our sign. I believe we had agreed to that. And then the annual Maple Syrup Festival and Pancake Breakfast is in Dublin, and that's on the 5th of April. And the Builders Association have a breakfast on the 7th of April, 8:30 to 11:30. And then on the 7th is our next regular council meeting, and the 10th is the Mitchell Dublin Seaforth Lions online auction. So those are the coming events. I don't think there's any notice of motions. Other business? See no hands. So we do have a closed session. So the recommendation that I have here is that Council of the Municipality of West Perth proceed into closed session at 7:21 to address matters related to the advice subject to solicitor-client privilege with regards to Bartels. We have a mover and seconder for that. Councillor Fournier, Councillor Foster, all those in favor, opposed, if any, that's carried. Okay, we're back. We had a quick closed session to deal with the legal team with regards to the upcoming OLT hearing. And got some legal advice, I guess, for that. So it brings us to the end of our meeting, and we do have a confirmatory bylaw. And it's bylaw 22, 2025, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council of the corporation of the municipality of West Perth, be read a first and second time the 17th day of March. Mover and seconder for that, please. Councillor Foster, Councillor Fournier, all those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And then bylaw 22 being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of council of the municipality of West Perth be read a third time and finally passed. Mover and seconder for that, Councillor Harold and Councillor Duck. All those in favor? Opposed, if any, that's carried. And then finally, a recommendation that the council and municipality adjourn our council meeting at 8:54. And I have to apologize when we adjourned the meeting because somebody forgot to turn my clock ahead an hour. So I was an hour behind. So moved by Councillor Rose, seconded by Councillor Phelps. All in favor? That is carried and we are adjourned.